الآن يمكنكم المشاركة في مبادرة الأيام الرقمية تحت شعار انطلق بقوة مع جوجل، والتي يتناول فيها خبراء جوجل عناوين جديدة أسبوعيا مثل السحابيات، مهارات من جوجل، أندرويد، فلتر، ذكاء الآلة، فايربيس، ديزاين ثينكينج، مقسمة إلى دورات وورشات عمل يومية بالإضافة إلى مسابقات أسبوعية. شاهد الأيام الرقمية مباشرة على اليوتيوب وشارك رأيك وأسئلتك مع خبراء جوجل، واحصل على شهادة حضور في كل محاضرة تشترك فيها. هذا وأكثر من الأحد إلى الخميس ابتداء من الساعة 9 بتوقيت دبي عبر الرابط المبين youtube.com/gdgmena.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Google MENA Digital Days. My name is Sachin, a Google developer expert, and in this episode, we'll learn all about the new announcements, features, and developments in Google Assistant. I'm super excited to be part of this Google I/O extended session, and without further ado, let's get started. So before we start, let's actually keep this as interactive as possible. I am looking at the comment section over here. We have a moderator as well, so feel free to interact using the live chat section. At the same time, what we'll do is to keep this as interactive as possible. So with that being said, a quick intro about myself. I'm a Google developer expert. I'm also a Google for Startup Accelerator mentor. I head the Google Developer Groups in Doha, CTO of Tuplo Life, a connected healthcare company based out of Dallas, Texas. And I'm also an active mentor for a lot of startups in the region. And finally, I'm also a writer, blogger, and YouTuber. Speaking of YouTube, I do have my own channel, so please do check that out. So any information that you're learning today, as well as anything to do with chatbots, voice bots, Google Assistant, machine learning, AR, VR, and Google Cloud. So I cover a lot of those things step by step for anyone who's getting started in these technologies. So the idea is to start step by step and take it from a beginner level to an advanced level. So feel free to check Tech with Such. So you can go to youtube.com/techwithsuch. So with that introduction being aside, let's get into the Google Assistant. So just let me know how many of you are using any kind of virtual assistant into your day-to-day lives. I'll be more than happy to see that in the chat section, just to get a pulse of, how many of you actually use any kind of virtual assistant. Now, speaking of virtual assistant, the first thing that comes to our mind is the Google Assistant. So for people who are not aware what is Google Assistant is your own personal virtual assistant from Google to get things done for you in the most helpful manner. Now, I've covered quite a lot of tutorials on how to build for the Google Assistant in the past. So do check them out either in the GDG MENA channel or directly in my channel as well. Now, in all of those tutorials, what you would have seen is there's a trend, right? So when the Google Assistant was launched, the most common things that you could typically do is you can ask Assistant for any kind of queries, and it's really smart. It's gonna get you the information within a split second. You have all the information available for you in the form of voice or in the form of text or display. Now, from that, what has eventually happened is the entire industry shifted towards building this smart home device ecosystem. So you had a majority of companies building devices that connect, and just by using voice, you could basically automate your home. So I'll show you some examples today of how I've automated my home years back using the Assistant and a bunch of connected devices. Now, with all of that being said, from there, when people started adopting to use the Google Assistant or the virtual assistants more and more into their daily lives, controlling devices, your lights at home, your, you know, the door locks, vacuum cleaners, a lot more that you could see. But apart from that, there was a shift that's starting to happen right now. So we are moving, the vision is basically towards ambient computing, right? An ambient future where your personal assistant or your virtual assistant is able to understand things around you, is able to understand the context at which you're asking queries, and a lot more. And I strongly believe that the best way how technology can be helpful for you is by technology not coming in your way. So what do I mean by that is using technology should be easy for each and every one, and it should happen in a natural manner. So I know that we are almost there. We are moving towards that future where everything is connected, everything is seamlessly integrated in our lives. And with a lot of advancements in AI and machine learning and natural language understanding, we are slowly moving towards that future, right? So with Google Assistant, in the past, we built for actually built for the assistant itself, how using the actions builder, we've built the assistant actions for the Google Assistant. So what is actions for the Google Assistant? So for everyone who's joining us for the very first time, an action in the voice first technology space basically means like a voice application, right? So whenever I refer to action, what I actually mean is a voice application, right? So everything that you do within by a conversation is all an action, right? So an action could be turning on the lights, turning off the lights, controlling your temperature at home, your air conditioner, um, you know, a lot more. So it could also be about asking for the news, updates, weather updates, so on. Now, with all of that being said, there's a shift that's happening, at least from where the assistant is integrated. Now, we've integrated assistant in smartwatches, uh, phones, smart displays, speakers. You can see the very first Google Home uh, behind me. And so the assistant is available in smart speakers, smart displays, phones, your TV, and even car, right? So now you have the Google Assistant available for you in your car in Android Auto. So before I actually move from covering all the new features that's announced during Google I/O, I would like to show you something. So this is an example of me interacting with the Google Assistant using the Google Home. Okay. Hey Google, it's TV time.
Sure, working my magic. Sit back, relax, and have fun.
So you can see that as I say it's TV time, my projector turned on, the lights in the room automatically dim down, and then it's able to connect directly to my source. So over here, it's actually being played out of like Xbox, as well as I have different sources connected to this. And then the projector turns on and it switches to the right source and then starts playing, right? So all of this experience, so I'll just go ahead, move further. I can also control, what I'm watching. But one thing that you notice in this video is so I'm just moving forward because this has quite a lot of examples.
Sure, let me transform myself into a vacuum robot and do my magic by cleaning home.
So when I say start cleaning, the vacuum robot automatically gets initiated and starts cleaning the entire house. So one of the things that I
Transform myself into
do is cleaning time. Oh. Hey Google, cleaning time.
Sure, let me transform myself into a vacuum robot and do my magic by cleaning home.
Okay, so now you understand. So the same way you can see examples of me controlling the lights and so on. So one common factor that you would see over here is the fact that every time I want to talk to the assistant, I use the the hot word, hey Google, right? I hope I'm not triggering a lot of devices out there. I'll start saying, instead of hey Google, I'm just gonna say hey G moving forward, so that I stop activating any devices out there or whoever's watching this video. Okay, so that's basically how we typically used to control, you know, uh, or give commands through to the Google Assistant. The conversation always used to start with hey G, what is the weather, what is the news, and then all the commands that I've typically used over here. Now from there, Google actually stepped it a bit further with adding a feature where you have continuous conversations. So the first time you say hey G, then followed by any commands, it can continue to keep going on. Now recently in Google I/O, one of the best features that I've seen is a feature called Look and Talk. Again, this feature is rolling out for the Nest Hub Max to begin with. So let me show you what this looks like. So Look and Talk is a feature, and we'll cover about quick phrase as well. Now, the reason why I showed you some of that demo is for you to understand like how the current interaction is with the Google Assistant. Now, with this feature, what it does is just by looking at the Nest Hub Max, it will understand that it is the right person in front of it. So it's a combination of face match and voice match, and then it will give you the results. So you don't technically need to even use the trigger or the hot word called hey G, right? So here's an example.
Hey Google, remind me to walk the dog at noon.
Sometimes you want a little help from Google without having to say, hey Google, every time. Introducing Look and Talk, another way of talking to Google on your Nest Hub Max. To activate the feature, just go to the Face Match settings page in the Google Home app on your phone. Now you can look at the Nest Hub Max from up to 5 feet away and start asking for the help you need. No Hey Google needed.
Show plumbers near me.
Since Look and Talk is designed with your privacy in mind, Google Assistant uses Face Match and Voice Match, so Look and Talk will work just for those who choose to turn it on.
Add dog treats to my shopping list.
And, similar to our other camera sensing features, video from Look and Talk doesn't leave the device. Look and Talk makes asking Google for help easier and more natural than ever, while staying as safe and secure as ever.
So that was one demo. So as you look at it, how it basically works is it actually uses a combination of almost 6 machine learning models. So the moment you come near to the device and you're gazing at the device, you would also see like a small, I don't know how many of you noticed, along with understanding that, okay, this is, let's say, Sachin in front of the device. It will also have the Google Assistant icon on the top left, making sure that you know that the assistant is listening at that point. So just with a combination of this, you can actually start interacting with the assistant. Now, as I said, the vision is to move towards an ambient future. So what we are trying to do is, as much as possible, we are trying to make sure we are having a natural conversation and getting things done. So during Google I/O, one of the demos that was shown, and this is actually a live demo. So what what you've seen over there is how to activate that specific feature and how that works. And this is actually a small video of how exactly that specific command actually worked in real time. So here's an example of that.
The mic and camera are back on.
Walking into the kitchen to start a weekend with my family, I can simply look over and ask, show me some beaches in Santa Cruz.
So you can see over there, it
I found a
started
few
showing the
beaches near
Google
Santa
Assistant and
Cruz.
was able to fetch the answer. Okay, so I hope you guys are excited about this specific feature, and I hope this feature comes to more and more devices. So it's starting to roll out with the Nest Hub Max. Now, the next one that we are talking about is quick phrases. Now, with quick phrases, a classic example was again the demo that I showed earlier. My own experience at home, where every time I need to say, turn off the lights, turn on the lights, it will always, look for that trigger word, right? Now, with quick phrases, you can actually opt to choose any of your own quick phrases, and then the assistant will automatically trigger trigger that specific action. So things like setting a timer or alarm, ask for the time, turn the lights on or off, cancel the timer, dim or brighten the lights, ask for the weather. So anything you could decide to choose any of these, enable it, and then you can actually have quick phrases. So how does it work? Here's another example of that.
All right, check this out. Turn off the living room light. That was so easy. I just said what I wanted. Design.
So as she said, that was so easy, because now that you just walk into a room, you have the assistant and you say turn on the lights or turn off the lights, it will understand that the context, and based on the knowledge graph, it will understand where you are, which room, and based on the lights, it will automatically turn on and turn off, right? So the common theme over here is to make sure that technology is actually not coming in your way while you're getting your things done, right? We are trying to be as transparent as possible, or in fact, the technology being as invisible as possible. So you have a natural conversation, okay, turn on the lights and then it turns on the lights, or turn off the lights and then it automatically turns off the light, without actually saying the trigger word each and every time. Now, some of these things are actually possible using improved speech and natural language understanding models on device. And that is also possible and achieved using Google's Tensor chip. So the Google Tensor chip allows to run the machine learning tasks super fast. So what does that mean? So when we started off in terms of the whole having the conversation with the assistant, before most of all the models were actually in data centers, right? So you can see, for us to have a natural kind of communication with the assistant, and humans, we are super good in understanding the context nuances just by interacting with each other. But for machines to understand, it is a much more complex work behind the scenes. Now, we started off with all the models in data center, and from there we could improve the latency or reduce the latency by having some of the speech models actually on the device, and then recently with improved speech and NLU models on the device with the help of Tensor chip, that latency is still down. We've kind of improved the ability to have that fast, rapid conversation and getting the information as quickly as possible. so that the assistant understands what exactly you're saying based on your context, intent, and so on.
Show you a preview of how this will all come together. For example, I might tap and hold on my Pixel Buds and say, play the new song from Florence and the something.
Got it. Playing Free from Florence and the Machine on Spotify.
Okay, so if you look at that specific demo, you'd see that when she was interacting with the assistant, she actually stopped because she was thinking about what to ask. And then the Google Assistant was smart enough to actually nudge and say, what exactly are you asking? And then she says the name of the song, but she doesn't know the whole song, the full song title. And the assistant was smart enough to understand that and fulfill that specific request. So the whole idea is to being understood and to easily initiate conversations by just speaking naturally, right? So that's the aim of where we are going towards, for you to have be understood, be it based on your environment, based on your context, and easily get information done by just naturally interacting with the assistant. Now, for all of this that you have seen, majority of the demos that you have also seen is towards like smart home automations and controlling, building your own actions for the Google Assistant. Now, recently, we've also launched app actions. So what are app actions? App actions actually allows you to extend your Android apps or extend the Google Assistant for your Android apps. So what does that mean? So let's say that you have built your own, for all the Android developers out there, you would have built your own application. Now you want to voiceify your Android app. What's the best way to do that? So the best way to do that is by using app actions. App actions allows you to take your existing Android app and start building or start extending the Google Assistant so that the users can actually interact and get things done through your app in a quick and fast manner. And how is that done? So that is done through app action shortcuts. So today we are going to see a demo of how all of that works and how the behind the scenes, what you need to do as an Android developer, what are the things that you need to keep in mind. And I'm sure that this is really simple for anyone who's getting started. And you can also see the power of voice and how easy it is for users to interact with your application. And there's quite a lot of advantages of doing this because, as I've said in the previous episodes, it's always difficult to, right now, especially where we have a lot of applications installed on our phone, for the user to actually find the app and start interacting with your application is always a pain because it takes quite a lot of scrolling, finding the right app, clicking, opening, and then going through your, different steps and getting that specific activity done. Now, with all of that being said, with app actions, your users can just have a natural conversation with the assistant, and the assistant will then match that conversation. It will understand that, okay, this person is asking for so and so application. Let me pass the conversation and the details to the app, and your app can fulfill that request and provide it back to the user. As an example, what does that look like? You say, hey G, order a pizza from example application. Now, if you had to do this through the app, traditional way, you have to search for your app, find the example app, and then go through ordering a pizza. But right now, with just having a conversation, the assistant can then bring up, it will understand based on the conversation, the intent matching happens. So what is intent matching? Intent matching is basically all about, based on the conversation, what exactly is this user trying to say? So that's the intent. What is the intent of the conversation? Now, intent matching happens, and then parameter extraction is where you want to extract key information, right? So here, order a pizza is a key information, and then your app processes it. It will automatically open the app to start a pizza order, right? So all of this behind the scenes, this is what is happening. But when the user is actually interacting with the application, all they're saying is, "Hey G, order a pizza from example app," right? So here's a classic example of that. You will talk to the assistant and say, "Order a cheese pizza from example app." The first step is processing users input. The assistant takes care of all of this. It will automatically open up your app, right? And it will understand that it's okay, it's a cheese pizza, and then it will take you through the next steps. Now, for this to work, you have a lot of built-in intents. So currently, you have 60 plus built-in intents for different categories. So you have common, finance, communication, fitness, food ordering, shopping, productivity, travel, social, games, ride sharing. So based on what category your app falls under, you can make use or leverage the 60 plus built-in intents. So some of the common built-in intents are opening the app. So even now you can just go and say to the Google Assistant, "Hey G, open Spotify or open any of your application," it will still do. Now you have other things like get thing, create review, create thing, get order, news articles, update account, get account details. So you have all of this built-in intents readily available, so that all you have to do is refer that within your application, and you can basically voiceify your Android app. So you also have custom intents. So how does this all work, right? Now, if you look at this, you have shortcuts.xml. Okay. So as I said, app actions basically right now works with shortcuts.xml. So within shortcuts, you have capabilities, right? So with capabilities, all what you're saying is, we talked about built-in intents, right? So here we are using the built-in intent called getThing. And within that capability, we are referring to which intent and which target class. So here you'll basically provide your application ID, and here you'll be providing your target class that you want the application to process. And within that, you have a parameter, and this is where you're extracting the key value pairs, right? So this is basically the main feature that you would need to add within your Android app to get started. So the capabilities, the shortcuts.xml file is the main thing that allows assistant to understand that, okay, when a conversation happens, it will check the shortcuts.xml file from these applications, and then, okay, there is this shortcuts.xml file which actually gets the get thing built-in intent done. So let me handle that conversation to that specific application. Okay. And on the other side, on the actual class that you're talking about, all you're doing is filtering the view model based on app actions get thing built-in intent. So if you remember that we had that under shortcuts, we had created that key value pairs, referenced it. So here you're basically getting that value in your class. Now, let's actually go through this whole thing right now. First one is understand users request. So you have how does it happen? It happens through built-in intents and custom intents. And fulfilling the user's request happens through shortcuts. So So what we talked about, you have static shortcuts, dynamic shortcuts, and widgets. So widgets is also a new thing which we will cover today. Now, speaking of widgets, and before we actually go into widgets, what I would like to do is to actually show you a live demo as well as walk you through an actual application so that you understand what needs to be done for you to add app actions to your Android applications. So let me switch from there to Android Studio. Okay. So for all Android developers out there, you can actually go through these steps, simple steps. So as I said, so for the first thing that you can do is you can either go and add your shortcuts.xml file, okay, which you have over here under XML, under your resource values, you have shortcuts.xml file. So what does this shortcuts.xml file do? Now, just like how we saw in the slides, we have the capability. Within the capability, we are saying that the intent that we want is the get thing built-in intent. And within that intent, we are also doing parameter extraction, which is thing.name and the key is q, right? So, and the target class is also referenced here, which is task activity. Okay, so I hope you guys understand how the shortcuts.xml works. Okay, now I will come back to more features over here, but let's just start with this and then we will come back to some of the additional things that you can do within the shortcuts.xml file. So once you have your shortcuts.xml file ready, what we can then do is you can go to your Android manifest.xml file, and within the Android manifest.xml file, you can basically go ahead and add this metadata. So this metadata is required so that your app knows to reference the app actions shortcut.xml file. Okay, so this is within your main activity. What you do is come down, add the metadata, which basically references, gives an indication that, okay, here's a reference to the app actions shortcuts file. And this is the same shortcuts file that we just saw earlier, right? Now, if you look closer, if I scroll down, you have different capabilities. Now, this one, we've seen this, which is the get thing capability or the built-in intent. Now, the next intent that you're seeing over here is open app feature. Now, with the open app feature is basically like, let's say you want to open your application. This is another built-in intent, right? So over here, you'll see the same trend, which is show the built-in intent, refer your Android target package, and also refer to the class. So, and the parameters over here is feature. Then the next one, if you look down, you have something called as active task and completed task. Now with these, you can actually take it a step further and say, okay, these are the shortcut IDs. So for active task and completed task. So just for context, this application is basically a to-do list application. So what it does is a simple to-do list, so you can check items off as completed, and you can have your current or active task or list in the application. So that's all it does. And I will show you, I will also, you can also see how this was done step by step from start till the end in the Tech with Such YouTube channel. So you can refer the Google Assistant or App Actions tutorial playlist, and it will actually take you through step by step. But on a high level, for anyone who's joining us today, for you to understand how App Actions and Shortcut works, this is how it is. The main key thing is your shortcuts.xml file. where you're referencing each and everything, right? Now, over here, you can also see capability binding is open app feature. And another important thing that you can also see is parameter binding. So this is again important. Why? Because let's say that you have different ways of actually asking a query. So let's say you want to make sure that the user might not always know what exactly is your uh, the, the values that the user can ask, or the conversation that the user should ask for your shortcuts to be triggered. So here you can actually go and look at these synonyms. So active task, completed task. So if I go and click on that, it's basically again a file where which is under arrays, an arrays.xml file. So if I click on that, you will get to see the reference. So the name over here is active task synonyms. So if the user says active, pending, pending task, open, all of this basically means the same activity that you're referencing here. Okay, so that's basically what is happening. Now, let's look at the other one, which is completed task. Now, if you go to the completed task, you can say it as completed, you can say it as completed task, finished, finished task, and so on. So it's easier for you to actually go and list down a list of keywords that the user can pretty much use while asking for this. And again, all the information that you're referencing in this specific class, here you're basically extracting the information and then showing it back to the user. Okay, so that's basically how app actions work. So what I can do is I can show you a demo, and here just bear with me where I actually connect to a live my phone, and we can actually go through with this. So in the meantime, feel free to leave your comments in the chat section. We can definitely, if time permits, we can definitely go through with some of these. Okay. So I can probably show, I'm not sure how many of you can see through the camera. Okay, I think you have some visibility over here. So if we can focus this into the camera, that would be great as well. So let me actually trigger this directly with the assistant. Show active in example application. So you can see that the application actually started, and it has automatically opened up the app. And in this case, you have all the pending to-do list automatically shown, right? So you can see that how easy it is by just having a conversation. At the same time, I can close this, and I can also say show completed in example application. Show completed in example application. And then it will automatically show all the items that is checked off. Okay, so I plan to actually show you the demo directly through a screen share, but unfortunately couldn't get that working. But I hope you guys actually saw through the thing. So once again, I can say show active in example application. show active in example application. And then it's automatically pulling up the details. So that's how easy it is. So you can definitely check it out. I hope you guys were able to see when I brought it closer to the camera. So that's how app actions work. Now, with the Google Assistant, by leveraging the Google Assistant and voicifying your Android applications right now, the user can basically use this shortcuts.xml. As developers, you guys can configure it. And then for users, the advantage is just by having conversation and getting things done. So I hope app actions and shortcuts.xml made sense. Now, the important reason why I showed you that working example and the code walkthrough for that is with another important feature, which is integrating Android widgets with Google Assistant. Now, how this works is very similar to what we saw earlier. Now, in the earlier thing, what happened is whatever the conversations that you're having, it is actually fulfilling that request directly into your application. So you had the app open, and then you can basically have it directly in the conversation or directly opened up. And in the specific fulfillment request, you have a specific activity launched and then the information displayed. Now, by integrating Android widgets, how does this work? So what this allows you is, let's go through the same flow. Here, the example is you can say, hey G, ask test app about my last run. So when you have this conversation, the assistant will then refer the built-in intent, so it can understand that, okay, there is a built-in intent, which is called get exercise observation. There's an entity extraction, and then your application will receive this information, do the processing, and then in this case, instead of actually showing the user by opening up the application and launching your application, here what we're doing is you can actually use existing Android widgets and then embed the information within that. So when you're having a conversation with the assistant, the widget is actually within the conversation. So which is actually a pretty cool feature. You'll see a demo of this as well. And then once the widget information is sent to the widget is then sent back, displayed within the conversation. And if enabled, it can also have a text-to-speech TTS happening over there. Okay. Now, here is an example. So if you look on the left side, you have Google Assistant, you have an Android widget, a simple widget. All it does is say, my last activity was walking. You have a duration and you have a distance listed over there. Now, if you look on the right side and you say, show me my last activity, by just having a normal conversation with the assistant, this is what it would look like. It will basically say, test app action says your last running activity was on Wednesday, March 2nd. And then this widget that you've created separately can be embedded within the conversation. So any rich widgets that you're doing, all of that can be embedded within the conversation, which would make the user have a much more rich experience by the ability for your widgets to embed that information and show it back to the user. So what's the difference between the last example that we did and the widgets example? In the last example, whenever you're having the conversation, it is your app which is opening up and fulfilling that request. Now, with the advantage of widgets, the user would feel that whatever the information that the user needs, it is all happening within the conversation. Now, from there, you can say, okay, what was my last activity? For some reason, you give a activity which you have not done. So it will say no last activity found. It will basically give you the default text that you have configured within the widget. Okay. Now we'll see what are the steps that's required for you to achieve this. Now the first thing is, again, as we talked about, the main thing is to add the shortcuts.xml file. Now with the shortcuts.xml file, you have here, instead of the get thing intent that we did earlier, you have the get exercise observation. Now with the get exercise observation, again, you're saying, okay, this is the app widget. So if you look at the earlier one, it had, let me switch back to the earlier one so that you guys can see. Here you're saying capability and intent. And within the intent, you're saying, okay, this is the target class that basically handles it. Now, in this example, you're basically referencing, okay, here's a capability of a built-in intent called get exercise observation. Within that, you have app widgets. Now, with app widgets, you have the get exercise observation. Okay. Now, with the get exercise observation, you're again referencing the same thing. You're telling, okay, this is your target package. Then, let me go back. You're saying, okay, this is the target package. And just like how you're referencing, you can also give the parameters over here, right? To extract that key information. Now, you can also see there's an extra parameter over here, which basically has text to speech enabled. So this is the value that's passing over there. Now, once that is done, the next thing that you do is you need to define these inventory elements by adding this configuration above the get exercise observation. So whatever you added over here above this, you're going to add the different inventory elements, right? In this case, we talked about running, walking, and so on. So for each of these activities, you're adding a shortcut, right? So a shortcut with a shortcut ID called running. And within that, again, you're referencing what is the capability binding, which is, again, get exercise observation. In the previous application that I showed you, we had the same thing. We had capability binding, which says open application. And then it was referencing like, active and completed task and pending task and so on. So similarly, you have running and walking here. Now, then the next step that you need to do is also add fallback intents. So you need to also handle that whenever a user is having this conversation, and if your app cannot handle that information, if there is an issue, you basically make sure that you add a fallback intent. Okay. So a fallback intent with no parameters needed to successfully execute. So everywhere you can see that you're referencing the target class as well. Okay. So now, once those three steps are done, what are the next things that you need to do? You have to basically enable the widget for the assistant. So for that, there are few more steps that you need to do. And I don't want to go in detail for these steps. What I would rather do is, in this chat section, you will find the actual code lab for this. And I'll walk you through that as well, which will actually walk you through each and every step. But on a high level, for you to understand the basics, what you need to do is add the widgets extension library, okay, within your Android app, add the widget service, update the widget class, and enable the text speech. Once all of that is done, you can see that once you interact with your application, you will have this working. Now, for everyone who's actually joining us today right now and who's seeing this, there's one thing to keep in mind. For you to actually test this application out on your own phone, you need to actually upload the application onto the Google Play console, the developer Play console, and then over there you have to enable like an internal testing release. Now, all of that, if it is not covered in any of the official videos, I've shown it in my channel step by step. You can actually refer how to extend Android apps for Google Assistant. There's two videos, one with actions.xml and another one with shortcuts.xml. I would highly encourage you to look at shortcuts.xml version, right? So you have to enable that. Once it is enabled, that you sign your application and upload it to your Play Store. Again, it's an internal release. You don't have to make it public. Once you do that, then you'll be able to directly test all of this conversation, just like how you saw me today interacting with the assistant directly from my phone. I've done the same way. All you have to do is, once that is available in the Play Store, based on your Google account or your Gmail account, it will understand that, okay, it's the same account, and it will enable you to start trying out the conversations. Once you've tested your application, once everything is done, you can then release it to the general public so that everyone can actually use it. So again, there's a video from Google I/O which basically covers this, and here's an example of that.
In the exercise observation box, we update the default climbing with the value running.
And this tool that you're seeing over here is the
Now,
App Actions
we
test
click
tool.
Run App Actions.
Test app action says, your last running activity was on Sunday, April 3rd, and it was for 0 minutes and 0.17 kilometers.
As expected, the widget announces our last recorded running activity. We have now verified that our TTS output is working as expected. Let's do one more test to see that our application logic is working. We will now use an unsupported exercise type, like climbing.
Test app action says, couldn't find the last activity for climbing.
As expected, the widget announces that no such activity is found.
So the entire video covers that. And for everyone who's joining, and thank you all for joining today's session. I'll go through some of the questions. We'll have some time for going through Q&As as well. For people who are joining, if you're interested in building your own chatbot from scratch and going through advanced levels, I would highly encourage you to go through the Ultimate Chatbot tutorial series. Here's a playlist for that. So all the links are again there in the slides. So you can refer to the slides and get these links. And then for Google Assistant, as I mentioned, you have this app actions. Extend Android apps to Google Assistant. You can definitely check that out, which would actually cover all the basics from first till the end. And from there, you can actually go and learn all the different versions of how you can interact with the Google Assistant, how you can build for the Google Assistant using Actions Builder. And before we actually do this, I want to also show you how the code lab looks like. So everything that you've seen to cover for the Android widgets, you can actually go through this code lab and prepare. If you have any clarifications that you need to see, especially when how does it work to get Play Store and all of those kind of stuff, I've clearly handled it step by step in the videos, so you can refer the videos for reference. And basically all we did is configuring the app, and as you can see right now, the main configuration that you need to do is basically the app action. the shortcuts.xml file, right? So what's the advantage of this? Just by having a conversation, you're embedding your widgets directly into the conversations rather than opening up the app. So I hope this was useful for you guys. And for anyone who's seeing me for the first time in this channel, make sure you follow me on Twitter. YouTube is again youtube.com/techwithsearch. I do write a lot of articles, step-by-step tutorials, so do check those out as well. Now let's actually go through some of the questions. So I have Mohammed asking few questions. Let me scroll up. Does the deployment of the Google Assistant service integration process step is being done manually or automatically? So I hope Mohammed, I hope what you mean is once you build the entire application, how do you deploy it? So just like how you do it for any other applications. So if you're building for the Google Assistant a direct conversational actions, you have actions on Google console. You can directly go and submit that action, just like how you have your Android app review. There'll be a review done and then it will be published. If you're talking about your Android apps, it's the same process. You just have to upload your applications, your shortcuts.xml file, configure all of this, and then submit it. Once your application goes live, then it's basically automatically done. So anyone with the Google Assistant can basically trigger and invoke your application and get the fulfillment done. Then let's see. For new features of Google Assistant, can you share documentation for those features if available? Yes. So definitely all the links are shared in the slides. So you can definitely go and check those out. At the same time, you can also go to the Google Assistant documentation. If you're looking at app actions, you can just search for app actions in developers.google.com and you'll get all the documentations and everything directly over here. Okay, so everything that we've covered is available, and for anyone who wants to really look at step-by-step tutorials on how to build for the assistant, you can go through the channel. And what I would recommend is, if you're getting started, you can go through this specific playlist, which is the Google Assistant tutorials series, so that you know all the different ways that you can build for the assistant. Right now, all you guys saw is how you can build with your Android apps. There are ways where you can directly deploy your action that can be handled through the smart speaker, smart displays, and so on. That's the Actions Builder and Actions SDK. So this is a playlist for that. And then you can actually go through this one. So you can see this tutorial, which is App Action Shortcuts, controlling Android apps using Google Assistant. You can definitely go through that where it covers all the information. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited with all the new announcements with Google I/O, and I'll be coming forward with more and more tutorials. So stay tuned for that. With that being said, once again, thank you for joining. My name is Sachin, and see you all in the next one.